I'm feeling really good. We got our wonderful co-host back with us today, who's back from holidays, Claire from the Skoll Foundation. Claire, welcome back. And maybe I'll just pass it to you.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. So lovely to be back with all of you and join this conversation. Just to give you a sense of flow, if you haven't joined one of these calls before, Alice and Emna with the Wellbeing team and I will be just keeping an eye on the conversation in the chat as the conversation progresses. Feel free to offer reflections, questions, other things that are coming to mind as we go through, and then we'll tee those up for Erin and Rhonda later in the conversation. So lovely to see you all. And if you haven't done so, just let us know where you're calling in from and how you're coming to the call today, how you're doing.
And then we're really, really excited about having the wonderful Rhonda Magee with us today as well. She's continuing in a series of elders and others that have been with us over the past few weeks. And Rhonda brings a beautiful, unique perspective to our group. Rhonda, hello. I think you're somewhere with us. You just need to unmute yourself.
I just unmuted myself. Hello.
And good morning to you in the Bay Area. We have people dialing in from around the world, and it's really beautiful seeing this sort of like kaleidoscope dial in with all of us going through a pretty interesting perspective and experience at this moment in time. We thought we'd, instead of trying to introduce you, that we just sort of dive right into this. And so have people get to know you through a little bit of your own sharing, if that works. And so I was wondering if you might be up for telling us a little bit about a bit about the context in which you grew up and a little bit of your childhood experience as well.
Yes. So by the way, if anyone at any time has any trouble hearing me, just give me a kind of a signal and I'll try to raise up my voice. So far, so good though. Okay, good. Well, thank you so much again for inviting me to join with you. Erin and I had a chance to talk a little bit before, and I shared with him that I kind of come into this moment, you know, as a law professor, a person who teaches meditation, but all of that in a certain sense started for me many, many years ago. As a little girl, I was raised, born and raised in the southern part of the United States. In particular, North Carolina was where I was born. So it's a state that was part of the, you know, the traditional South of the United States and all of the kind of legacies of white supremacy and racial hierarchy, almost like caste, that were built into how you know, community life was structured and all of that. So, and I, you know, I named the year. I was born in 1967. So I was born actually in the last year of Martin Luther King Jr.'s life on the planet. So in the midst of a period of a lot of change and intentional efforts to transform a set of baked in structures, determining everything, so many things about opportunity and access, and really, frankly, you know, the just distribution of resources, you know, resources including healthcare, food, that were often, education, often not as equally available to African Americans, like my family, or to women, and particularly that intersection. As a Black woman, there were like lots of limits on what women like me could do. And then my generation was coming up at a time when those things were changing. And so I had opportunities to, you know, get an education that my mother and grandmother had not had. But as a little girl, you know, I was growing up in a family where there was a lot of the, you know, the legacies of all the things I've alluded to that was showing up in the ways that they do sometimes in the family, my immediate family. So my father was, had actually tried to escape some of what I just described as a Black man in the middle of the 20th century by joining the military, which sometimes happens. People trying to escape whatever their local oppressions and find themselves in a certain kind of other oppression. And my father came back from his service, you know, with, again, the kinds of compounded legacies of oppression that can show up there. So he came into the family with a problem with alcohol, abusive, and all of those sorts of things. And so my parents' marriage didn't last very long. And then when I was just 3 or 4 years old, I ended up spending a lot of time with my grandmother. My grandmother, who had been raised in the South herself and had very menial work all of her life, picking tobacco out of fields, cleaning houses for, you know, white families in the area. By the time I came along, she was doing that kind of work, but she'd also been called to the ministry. And so she had found a way of honoring her own life and actually also teaching and supporting others in community, even though her own life was not, you know, was a hard one. And so the inspiration that I drew even as a little girl, watching her kind of find a way of honoring, centering, grounding herself, even in difficult circumstances, never left me. So even though I ended up leaving the South, getting an education at the University of Virginia there, but then moving to San Francisco and, you know, doing all kinds of trainings for my mind and law and all sorts of different things. You know, when the time came for me to sort of move into my post-education life, the memory of my grandmother's regular, dedicated, centering practice just was something that helped me to see that even though I'd had all these opportunities that she hadn't, there was something she had learned about how to live in difficult times that would be helpful for me. And so that was the beginning of my own exploration of like inner work as a support for doing work in the world.
I love that image from your grandmother too, of what she would do every morning, like that. And I don't know if you want to talk about that a little bit, just how that touched you. Yeah,
thanks, Aaron. Yeah, we spoke a little bit about how, you know, so when my parents were breaking up, I would spend many nights on the floor in her living room where we slept, like on what we called a pallet, some blankets on the floor. I would, as a little girl, often wake up before dawn and I would see my grandmother's, the light coming from underneath the door in her room. And somehow we knew that to be a sign that she was in that room. We didn't bother her when she was in the room in that way. But I later came to understand that that time, which would, you know, last 20, 30, 40 minutes or so, maybe an hour, actually, it was a period for her of prayer, basically, and centering contemplation. And she would, you know, stay in the room, engaged in this kind of disciplined devotional practice. And then she would come out and quite typically she'd spend a bit more time in this little area in the small home that we had where there was like a pot-bellied little stove, a heater area. She had a rocking chair. She would sit in that chair. After doing her own practice in her room, she'd come out and read scriptures. And so then we could come and kind of join her and sit near her and kind of listen to the readings. But this was her regular grounding for then cooking for us, getting everybody else off to work or school or babysitters or wherever we needed to go, and then going and cleaning houses. At the time, she was actually cleaning one house for one family, you know, 5 or more days a week, 8 or 9 hours a day. The family had the improbable name of the Outlaws, but she would clean this one house. And now as an adult, I kind of realized no one needs a house cleaner 8 or 9 hours a day. There's something else going on, obviously, when you have set up your life such that you have a person serving you in that way. And it's a legacy of a lot of things, let's say, that a Black woman was serving that family in that way. But from what I saw was that my grandmother did that work, but was able to nevertheless have a sense of her own worth, had a sense of a way of holding this experience in a way that didn't close down her heart. She was also somehow able to see that she had things to offer beyond that role. So she, again, started, teaching from the spiritual path that she had followed. And so all of that struck me, at a kind of a period in my life where I was very impressionable. And it made an impact on me to see her, self-disciplined grounding for, again, a life that was not glamorous, but one where she could feel real contributions. I think I told Aaron, and then on the weekends, she would offer support for members of the community who were even struggling even more than we, and we, did not have a lot of resources. But she would bake cakes that we would all wish they were staying in the house, but they would be for others, for either, church or other individual members of the community who were suffering, mourning, or needed something. So there was just that image and that model of her as really my first teacher in terms of how to manage a difficult life with the support of some kind of contemplative ground.
So Rhonda, this takes us through many, many years, and you eventually looking for your own practice after you looked to, as you went beyond law school, if I remember correctly. And I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about that and also what it meant in your life.
Yeah, I moved out, from Virginia and from law school to start a job as a lawyer here in my mid-20s. And I studied graduate school in sociology, and I'd even become a military officer, taking a scholarship in ROTC to help pay for school. So I had done a lot of these different, very distinct kinds of trainings and education paths and this and that. And I came to San Francisco where I had a job waiting, but I studied for the bar here. And I had a month and a half or so between taking the bar and starting my job. And I just realized that I had been training and studying and going and doing and preparing for so many years without really much of a break, that when I did have this time off, I really didn't have the capacity to just rest. So it was during that period, I didn't have money to go on some sort of trip. All I had was myself, and my mind would not really give me a break. And so it was during that period that I started to look for a way of supporting myself. And also I'll say, I was aware that coming from Virginia to San Francisco, I was leaving home, going across country, 3,000 miles away, starting over again. I had a job, but I didn't know a lot of people here. And I knew I was entering a field where people like me were in the vast minority. There were about 70 lawyers in the office where I was going to work. I was the only minority woman there. There was one Latino man there, just the two of us out of 70, and all the other lawyers were white, predominantly men. And so I knew I would, be going into an environment which would be difficult. I'd traveled enough to know that even though I had skills that I could apply as a lawyer there, that context would be challenging for me. And so, yeah, I started to explore ways of adding to all of these sort of refined pathways to education and development, some kind of centering practice to help me. And so I started exploring meditation. My partner, my boyfriend then and now, had a book on his shelf called the Bhagavad Gita for Daily Living. His family heritage is Indian, South Asian Indian. So I, even though he wasn't really reading this book, I grabbed the book and found a description of a kind of meditation practice that I tried to begin to explore myself, and I could immediately feel the way that it could support me in the work that I had begun to do. Ultimately, I left practicing law and became a law professor, and I chose to teach about racism in American legal history. And in the work of teaching about how to, use the legal system for positive social change, we were studying all the ways that the law had gotten it wrong historically and been part of the oppression in the US. And I just started to realize that the only way that I could continue to teach and study and reflect on this with differently diverse groups of students was through the support of my practice. So I started bringing my practice even more into my life as a support for helping others address racism and other kinds of discriminations, the intersections of racism with all kinds of discriminations, which is the kinds of things my students were preparing to deal with right here in San Francisco right now over the years. And so I started bringing mindfulness and other practices that I had been using to support myself kind of behind the scenes more into the classroom, because I kind of realized if I couldn't do that, then I was missing quite an opportunity for my students on the one hand, for them to learn something more, valuable than simply law, actually, but to learn more how to, deepen themselves and support themselves while they did that work. So I started, sort of bringing that into the law classrooms, and that began this journey that I've continued to pursue around bringing inner work together with work in the world.
Thank you, Rhonda. And then one last question before I think we move to practice. I was wondering, one of the things that we've seen a lot of, like across our community, is many parts of our community, or all of the parts of our community, are experiencing or working with or seeing injustice in many, many different forms in the world at the moment. And so that ranges from seeing people more generally in their countries, seeing the kind of chasms that we know in our society, seeing those broadened, all the way through to how dynamics might be playing out within the nonprofit sector itself, even between, for example, funders and practitioners. And so it's wonderful seeing, it'd be wonderful to hear, rather, what your reflection on that might be, and what you might invite or have to say about that.
Yeah, it's a hard time for so many of us right now, right? It's hard to know exactly where to begin in sort of really reflecting on how it is that the systems that we've built up across the world, are either buckling or outright failing in so many different ways. And these systems that we have built up to try to provide resource support, nonprofits and NGOs and that whole sector, is really often, on the front lines of vulnerability when times get tough. And I've seen that over the years. On many levels, resources fall, And then, the precarious positions of people in those organizations sometimes reflect the precarity in the broader culture, right? So often the first people who get swept out are the programs that were, most recently perhaps added to help, traditionally marginalized, vulnerable populations. So in other words, even these institutions and organizations and systems that are meant to help promote change obviously are part and parcel of a broader culture in which in which we sit. And so, yeah, right, in these cultures, including the mindfulness systems such as it is and all the others, these things evolve out of context and are embedded in place. And so, the dynamics around whose voices matter and where the resources, end up being distributed, just keep often reflecting, again, long-standing patterns, right? Around marginality on one hand and privilege on the other. And it's hard then, it's extra hard for us to keep bearing up. We are losing our jobs, people in this sector lose their jobs often quickly, right? Lose resources, have to start all over again. Programs start getting unfunded or halted or paused. How many of you are feeling or sensing some things like this in your area or region already? Yeah. And so it's very, very, very hard. And on top of that, of course, again, it varies again, depending on where we are, how identities, so particular identities end up being part of this picture. But, gender often adds another layer of wrinkle, right, for all of us as we try to do this work, and other ways in which our identities may show up to make life a little bit more challenging for us in the midst of challenge. So, I've seen this over the years, obviously, and been, writing and presenting around structural inequality, the arc between like personal, interpersonal to structural systemic injustice, right? And the fact that we're always embedded in all of those things. We're always struggling and feeling, right, all the legacies that each of us, historical, cultural traumas, particular personality challenges we have, our individual challenges. I use the term personal justice to address how we might really commit to taking care of our own selves as best we can as a first approximation to what justice might look like. Not about being selfish, but about attending to our own needs. Does that make some sense? Right? So that personal commitment is very, very important. And then how are we together? Very, very important. A second approximation to me in terms of what justice might look like right here, right now. Can we, as we do whatever work that we're doing, do that with a measure of deep respect for our common humanity, our, whatever our different, our different positionalities around any kind of spectrum of marginality or privilege. We're all human beings. We all suffer. And we suffer together, right? And again, our challenges are different, but in a certain sense, we know what it's like to suffer. We know what it's like to not be seen. We know what it's like to not be heard. We know what it's like to not have our deepest aspirations for making a difference be met with some kind of encouragement. So we know what it's like as humans, despite the different paths, right? How can we come together in ways that help support the creation and co-creation of places and spaces where we can heal together and work, so that we're not just replicating patterns of oppression? So that to me invites that personal justice commitment, interpersonal justice commitments, and then changing systems, policies, collectives as we go. But it's always important. always important, right? There's no moment where we benefit from forgetting the work we need to be doing on ourselves. I mean, at every level. Taking care of our psyche, taking care of the basics, drinking water, sleeping as best we can in these hard times for sleeping, right? I mean, hard sleeping right now, difficult to feel, right, safe enough, or that you can let go some of the churning, roaring mind. I feel this. Take care of ourselves. First approximation to what justice might look like in the world. We can't collapse, right? We have to sort of, Patricia Mushim Iketo, friend and teacher of mine, who wrote, writes and teaches about bringing social justice and contemplative work into the world. One of the founding teachers at the East Bay Meditation Center. She wrote this she's articulated this beautiful vow not to burn out, right? Taking a vow not to burn out. Personal justice. Yeah? Yes, right? So we, during these times, we have to just kind of take care. Now, this is not about, obviously, I can say this trusting that but I may have to say it, just emphasize, we're not gonna not do the work of helping other people because we're taking moments for self-care, right? Thank you, Anthony, for posting the vow not to burn out. I see it's coming up in the chat. Good to see you, Anthony, too, by the way. It's a short vow, right? Aware of the suffering. I vow, and there's more to it, but basically aware of the suffering and the temptation to kind of lose myself in that. I vow not to burn out, right? But that to say those words is really about an invitation into a practice, right? What are the practices that support not burning out? Caring for ourselves in those small ways, making sure we get the food, the water, the sleep, the rest, the time to recover and repair that we need to be able to continue to kind of fight for another day, to offer something to somebody else, okay? And helping each other in that, as you all are doing just by showing up here in your beauty, I can see, the energy of support that you're bringing just here right now. I can feel it in this gathering of 155 of us here. So this interpersonal support is really important. And it's a part of changing the world. It is actually a part of the change. Does everybody sort of feel that, understand that? This is a part of the change. How we are with ourselves and each other. Then obviously from this place, we might together make even more of the change. But this is already part of the change because we're entering into the world from a bit of a kind of a deeper sense of groundedness. We're not grasping so much for things out there because we're attending to it right here. And from this place, we can offer a little bit more. We can help, set short, medium, and long-term projects together and like bear up with the challenges of conflicts. I don't know about y'all, but sometimes conflicts arise when you're trying to do some work for good. How do we bear up? Pausing, taking care, recognizing that yes, there will be conflict. We're human beings with different views, different passions, different experiences. Pause, reconnect to like our deepest intentions, our values, our shared aspirations as best we can. Take the next best step, right? With kindness for ourselves and everybody in the process. Day after day, that's it.
So Rhonda, we're going to come back to that's it in a second. But there's also, you were also going to lead us into a practice. And I think what you've talked about touches beautifully on that, which is about being resilient in these times. And I think this is a community where a lot of resilience is being shown from what we're seeing. And so maybe I'll just pass it over to you to lead us in practice.
Sure, yes, okay. So I'll invite us into this practice, a kind of a centering practice aimed at assisting us in feeling the way that our bodies and our beings are part and parcel of this world, this thing we're tempted to call the external environment or the climate. Okay, so what I want to invite is for us to just sort of feel our being and our presence in this moment in whatever ways you'd like, whether eyes open or closed. Just take a moment to kind of drop into the sense of your belonging here. It sometimes helps me to really feel the points of contact between my body and the chair, and through that, the floor, the ground. Resting, perhaps, if you've got a chair behind you, or just feeling the support. And through these conventional kind of pieces of furniture, feel the support of the ground beneath you right here, right now. As you breathe in and out, allowing your attention to rest on the body in this moment. This body that got you here, with whatever imperfections or challenges any one of us might be facing, there might be much more that some of us are bearing up against physically than others. And yet we're here. We're here. So as you breathe in and out, feeling the support in this moment of the ground beneath you and this body with all its, let's say, perfect imperfections in this moment. Breathing in and breathing out, allowing the mind to rest on the sensations of the breathing body in this moment. Again, as best you can, knowing that in this moment, especially in this pandemic moment, some of the ways that our bodies and those in our community's bodies might be challenged really are about not feeling the ease that breathing often represents for us. So we're all kind of poignantly aware of our physical vulnerability. And right now, as best we can, if we can breathe, let's just feel as we breathe in and out, the way the breath can be a support, the way if we are breathing, as one of my teachers, John Kabat-Zinn, will say, there's always more right with us than wrong with us if you're breathing at all. So perhaps on the next in-breath, sensing into what is well within you. And as you breathe out, sort of see if you can really breathing in, sensing into what is well, breathing out the wish for well-being to extend from your experience in this moment out beyond these computers and walls and spaces of distance to cover those who are near, perhaps in the shelters where we are, the houses where we are, the communities where we are, everyone on this call. So breathing in a sense of what is well, breathing out the wish for well-being, extending to everyone near and far, like the wind. So as we breathe in and out, just really feeling the breath, not only as a support, but as a manifestation of our interconnectedness as we breathe, part and parcel of the what we call the air, right? This wind, this spirit energy that we are breathing in as we, right? The respiratory system, respire, breathing, connecting ourselves with spirit and sharing that as we flow and experience the sense of breath flowing in and out. Again, like the wind encircling the globe. So we've touched into the sense of the earth as a support, the breath, the air like the wind. Sense into the warmth of your heart and body in this moment if you can, if you're willing, as you breathe in and out. Feeling the element of fire in the will to be here, to be well, that we carry for ourselves, and the will and the wish that we have for well-being that we extend to each other and to the world in this moment. Feel the fire of that desire that we be well, that we heal, that we contribute something positive to a world. Be supported by the strength of the energy of your groundedness in a sense of what you can contribute today. First to yourself, then right locally, maybe to someone in need nearby, someone with whom you're sharing responsibilities right here, right now. And from there, what can we offer? Feel the fire of your purpose to be of service. And breathing in and out, sensing as you sit here in relative stillness, the sway of the in-breath and the out-breath. And as you feel that motion, sense into the movement, the gentle ways in which our bodies are always in motion, the life, blood, and energy of all of the life fluids running through us, through our veins in this moment. A kind of a way of reminding us that the body itself, more than 50% made of water, that element, to bring that in. And like water, our experience of this moment, of these moments of our lives, can feel quite fluid if we allow it. So recognizing as we breathe in and out, the sway and the flow of the in-breath and the out-breath. The way in which these moments of our lives come and go. Even the difficulties that we experience on any given day are not here forever. So as we breathe in and out, touch into that quality of flow within you. Noticing what is here, releasing, letting go, resting, preparing to receive what might be here in the next moment. So resting in this moment, in the fullness of your being. Earth, wind, fire, water, every bit a part of this vast universe, this earth that we now share right here, right now floating in the heavens together. Breathing in and out, resting in this mystery of the challenges, yes, and the opportunities of being alive right here, right now together. As we bring this meditation to a close, see if you can sense the way in which your embodiment, you might think of it as your own perfectly imperfect, marvelously ordinary embodiment, sort of of the universe that walks, the earth that moves, your being, no accident. The particular experiences, heritages that run through you, opportunities that meet you in this life, no accident. And we come together in our differentiatedness, our very different walks of life, to teach and to grow together, to share and to learn together. So as we kind of shift from this moment of reflective practice, the invitation is to sense into the quality of the heart, the spirit, the body in this moment. See if there's one word that comes to mind to describe what's alive in you right now. And in the spirit that these practices are simply a way of preparing us for engagement, that life itself is the real practice. The invitation is to now consciously invite a shifting back into this interpersonal engagement, but grounded in the sense that we're always much more than this moment of experience might be featuring for us. And together, our sort of power is new in nature. We don't know what we can accomplish, but we're here. Let's see if we can open up to possibility together.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
We thought we could open up space for questions from all of us. So if you could put those into the chat, we'll try to work our way through the questions in the remaining time that we have. And Rhonda, just as we're waiting for questions to come in, I'll start with one, which is talking about the small ways that we can practice. And so just so that we don't necessarily need to launch ourselves into big things.
Small ways that we can practice. I think you and I talked a little bit about some of the ways that I practice, small ways that I practiced today, for example, and many days. Noticing first thing when I wake up in the morning, whatever habit energy or stress energy might be pulling me into like what the day requires of me. And noticing, right? Becoming awake as I awaken, right? But really, as one of my teachers would say, finishing the job as best as possible. So biologically waking up is one thing, but really waking up is another. So pausing, right? That energy that's like, woo, let me go, and allowing, even if before getting out from underneath the covers, right? A more full waking up to the potential of this moment in life, this day. So perhaps for me today, it was literally still underneath the covers, but feeling the aliveness, right? Doing a quick kind of body scan from feet, hands, breathing in and breathing out. Gently opening, wakening the eyes and feeling the light coming in and appreciating, whatever the challenges of this day, I'm alive. Not to be missed. None of us know the length, right, of that dash, if you will, between birth and death. We don't know. We like to think we have so many days and so on and so forth, but we know right now we're all more radically aware of our physical vulnerability. So why not somehow take these small opportunities, noticing the sunlight, pause, really take it in as a way of recognizing these precious moments, this precious day. So yes, these simple ways that we might bring this kind of contemplation on, yes, radical kind of vulnerability that comes with being a human being. We're just these soft-bellied creatures that get up every day, heart and belly facing forward, like in this radically vulnerable position all the time, actually. And so we do all these things to feel a lot stronger. In fact, if we could just kind of recognize, it's hard being human. All of us are struggling right now. Some of us a lot more than others. So if we can just, as best we can, take moments to nurture ourselves, drink that glass of water in the morning, even if we're also having coffee, right? But do what we need to do to take care of ourselves in these small ways. And as you drink that water, remember the interconnection between self and environment, right? The so-called climate, that water, without which we wouldn't live just a few more days, right? You have to have it. So it's a way of remembering who we really, really, really are in those moments when we get pulled away. So I think there's nothing actually small about these small moments of practice, but we could think of them as small moments of practice and incorporate them throughout the day.
And Rhonda, if I could just invite another piece as well in that gentleness and noticing. One of the things I loved about what you talked about with that practice in the morning of like just seeing how we're waking up is also allowing space if we feel like we need more time to just lie there.
Yes, totally. Right. And also, it's just giving yourself a little bit more time. That might mean sometimes waking up a little bit earlier because, if you have to be somewhere at a certain time, but, it might mean just, you don't necessarily have to be where you think you have to be all the time. I feel like this moment, especially when we're pausing and sheltering all around the world, there's a temptation, at least I feel it in the United States, to like fill up and prove that you're doing something good with this time. There's, some pressure out there. There's always pressure in the West and in different parts of our contemporary world to constantly be proving in some demonstrable sense our worth. We did these things, we did this, we produced that. I really personally feel that this moment where we're all sheltering and we're all in this pandemic, it's meant to be a deeper pause than even the pause that we're already doing. So if we can take a little bit more time honoring life, the lifeblood, the life that runs through us, and from this place beginning to honor life around us more, I think so much regeneration can come from that. So yes, giving ourselves more time. Some days when it's hard, when I'm really sad, bordering on depression. I don't suffer technically from classical depression, actually haven't much, thank goodness, in my life. But I certainly have had melancholy, like it was edging toward it. And I'm sad. I'll feel some sadness a lot when I look at the state of things in the world. And some of those days I kind of can be tempted not to want to get out of bed. And so for me, it's a practice. Sometimes it's like feeling my entitlement to a kind of support as I do what I can to keep moving. So I kind of give myself this sort of metaphor almost of like I'll just imagine myself having the bed and the blanket with me, but I'm going to keep moving. I'm going to do what I can today, but I'm not going to feel like I'm bereft of support as I go. I am the support. This heart, this being, this awareness can be the support I need. And I'll do what I can today from that place. And if we model that, people can notice that you're meeting from a place with some reserve, right? You're not like on that edge. And that can help other people do that which they can for themselves. Even though we're sad, angry, full of rage, sometimes. I noticed in the chat a question about how we deal with anger and rage. Can I speak to that a little bit? I don't know if any of y'all are feeling some anger and rage. Many of these days, right? As we see like all the efforts we're making kind of get pulled out from underneath us, or all the kind of good thinking and policy making and values clarification. You know, I'm a law professor. So I think about like the International Declaration of Human Rights and all the good we've tried to do internationally to create norms for how we treat people with dignity. And I see these moments where this is sort of getting thrown out the window left and right, and it makes me so crazy and so angry sometimes. I just have to let it out, and I do. I mean, so I'm just gonna say, for me, mindfulness practice is not actually meant to be like this kind of idealized state of always in a bubble of ease. To me, it's like allowing life to flow through me. And so if I'm angry, let it out. Sometimes, right? It's like, feel it. Feel it. Because it's not going to go, it's not going away, right? You know, if you don't allow anger out or even acknowledge it, often it can get turned into depression, right? This unexpressed energy of like rage can turn inward on us. Feel it and let it be an energy to move and do. Again, not like a forest fire, right? This is where the mindful holding of anger comes in. Because we can just rage and burn things down. You all know what I mean by the metaphor of that, like the relationships, people close to us can feel that rage, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Maybe that wasn't the most wise way of doing it. But there are ways we can work with and let our anger, you know, be named as anger, right? And you know, as righteous. So what's underneath the anger, right? Is a practice. What is my anger telling me about what I value? Something that I believe needs to be honored, that's not being respected rightly. So I'm giving some words to kind of ways that I inquire into anger and rage and see what it's trying to tell me, and try to operate from that place of like wise engagement with, you know, as best I can. Again, we're just humans. Nobody's being, you know, we're not perfect. And we're not going to be able to pick it all up all the time. So this is about recognizing that all of our emotions are of value. Every single one. So if what you're feeling is sadness, inquire into it. Right? Don't just let it like become this fog, you know, watch it. It might, again, like, as I say, with humility, recognize that like some of us, we're all struggling in different ways. And I don't think of mindfulness as a, you know, a panacea against or protection against, you know, needing other kinds of support. Sometimes we actually need some kind of psychological or spiritual or other deeper support. But sometimes just, you know, before we go into a place of really needing deeper support, we can just become more aware and allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling. Like, I am sad today. I'm going to be sad. I'm going to cry. I am angry. I'm going to have to write this out. I'm going to have to inquire what this anger is about. What is it trying to teach me? What is this sadness trying to teach me? Because yes, often I see someone saying sadness is often under the anger. Yeah, partly, you know, even though anger is a hard emotion for our societies and for us to be allowed to feel in many of our societies. And again, depending on who we are, we get different messages about, you know, men sometimes are told that's the only emotion you can feel, whereas women are sometimes told, you know, do everything but feel angry. So, I mean, you know, we get all these different kinds of messages about it. It's like, it's so hard to just rightly feel what we feel. and not have to make a thing out of it, right? But I think mindfulness is, at least one thing it can do is to support us in more skillful engagement with our emotions, including the inquiry that I think they're presenting themselves to us to help support. The feelings are presenting themselves to us to support some kind of deep inquiry, to connect us back with purpose and action in a sort of a more wise way.
Rhonda, we have a couple of minutes left. And so maybe what we can do as we come to a close, just mention to everyone that next week, the session will be with both Sharon Salzberg and Parker Palmer. We're really excited to welcome them back and to have them also picking up on some of the questions that have been shared by the community. And then Rhonda, for the last couple of minutes, maybe we could invite you to close the session off. And what members of the group have been doing is taking a moment to linger and stay with the experience and stay with the community. So maybe we can invite everyone to just turn their videos on as well, so that we can also take in the experience of all being together. Rhonda, over to you.
So I just want to say thank you very, very much for all that you are, all that you do, all that you see and experience. And from the place of reflection on your experience, teach and offer the world. I want to offer the wish for your well-being. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well in body and in mind. May you be safe from inner and outer dangers. May you be truly joyful, happy, and free. Thank you. And I have to leave, but you can find me online in different places. I'd love to stay in contact. Be well, be safe, be the love that you are.
Thank you so much for joining us, Rhonda.
Thank you.
And thank you, everyone.